As you all know, recently I purchased a new MacBook Pro with M2 Pro chip, and after a few weeks of testing and use, I'm getting rid of it. I have found quite a few things that I don't need or don't like, which led to this. I think it would be fair to make some sort of a mix of good and bad stuff about this MacBook because, oh boy, there's plenty of both. Let's talk about the elephant in the room and the main issue for me, the performance. Last week I made a video where I compared the new M2 Pro MacBook Pro to the M1 Pro machine. I advise you to watch a full comparison, but here is a quick summary for you. I've compared the base M2 Pro with 10 CPU cores and 16 GPU cores, 16 gigs of memory and 1 TB SSD to the M1 Pro with 10 CPU cores, 16 GPU cores, 16 gigs of memory and 512 gig SSD. On paper, the new MacBook Pro should be significantly faster, but the real-world results are different from fairy tales Apple tells us. In CPU tests, the M1 Pro was slightly faster, and in GPU benchmarks, the M2 Pro was faster, but in apps, the situation was different. In the video editing test, I exported a 13-minute long 10-bit 4K project in DaVinci Resolve, which is optimized exceptionally well. The M1 Pro took 19 minutes and 1 second, while the M2 Pro did it in 19 minutes and 6 seconds. Yes, 5 seconds slower. Maybe with a few updates, the M2 will be faster, but in our video editing test, it was always second. In a photo export test, I've exported 50 heavy photos in Photoshop, and the M2 Pro did that 1 second faster than the M1 Pro. Here, the difference is irrelevant since the overall file sizes weren't that huge as in video editing. In the music test, both machines were able to handle 137 tracks in Logic Pro. The M1 Pro crashed after 32 seconds, while the M2 Pro lasted 41 seconds. So the same amount of tracks, but M2 Pro was a bit faster. In the Xcode test, the M2 Pro emerged victorious once again, but the margin is far from substantial. Compiling a project took 5 seconds less on a new MacBook Pro, which is almost negligible once again. In Unreal Engine, the situation was even more interesting. M2 Pro did better in real-time active scenes, averaging with almost double the FPS of the M1 Pro. However, in the render test, the M1 Pro pulled ahead, finishing the render 44 seconds faster. I have no idea what is the cause of this difference, but the M1 Pro seems like a more reliable performer so far. This uncertainty with the performance is the biggest red flag for me. Nobody wants to spend money on something that's not performing as expected, right? The SSD got slower, and even with more powerful hardware, it's still lagging behind. And in situations when the M2 Pro is faster, the difference isn't astronomical. It's very minor, and it's definitely not worth spending extra money on, especially if you own the 2021 model. But I can't only hate the performance, there is some good there. M1 Pro and M2 Pro in my tests are both 10-core chips, but the M1 Pro has 8 performance cores and M2 Pro has 6. This means the M2 Pro has double the efficiency cores, which is always great for battery life. Small, less intensive tasks on M2 Pro will be done with these efficiency cores, thus preserving battery life. In my use cases, it is hard to spot the difference, but I can clearly see people who work from cafes getting the most of this. With 2 extra efficiency cores, working in a restaurant will be even more enjoyable and somewhat longer. But I am not one of those people. I do heavy work, video editing, photo editing, 3D and so on. So those efficiency cores for me aren't as important, and I most likely won't feel any difference. The next drawback for me was the speakers. I have admitted that I use headphones most of the time, but recently I was doing a marathon of Lord of the Rings movies, and the speakers seriously let me down. I was expecting to feel the scale of the movie, the epicness of everything, but the new MacBook Pro took it from me. The rich and boomy sound turned into something more muffled. The sound in new Macs is definitely something to think about, because if you're planning on listening to music or watching movies without headphones, you'd better look into older MacBook Pros. I'm serious. Now tell me, have you ever found yourself stuck with a PDF document you needed to fill out or annotate but had no idea how to do it? We've all been there. That's why I'm using PDF Gear for all my PDF needs, the sponsor of today's video. With PDF Gear, you can say goodbye to the frustration of juggling multiple programs to manage your PDFs. Just imagine being able to view PDFs and annotate with ease, highlight important text, add notes, or even draw on the document with customized colors. No more frustration with filling out forms. With PDF Gear, you can easily insert check marks, radio buttons, and even signatures. And if you need to make changes to the structure of your PDFs, no problem. You can easily insert, extract, delete, or rotate pages as needed. And that's not all. With PDF Gear's OCR technology, you can convert PDFs to Word, Excel, and more, or even convert other document types into PDF. All for free. And if you have multiple PDFs that need to be organized, PDF Gear makes it easy with its ability to merge, split, and compress PDFs in batch. Say goodbye to the hassle of managing PDFs and try PDF Gear today by clicking the link in the description. Moving on, a positive thing, however, is the improved webcam. Last week I suddenly found myself in a ton of meetings and almost everyone noticed the improved image quality. Yes, it's still 1080p, but new algorithms make the image noticeably better. It's not a night and day difference, but it's there. Such small improvements may seem irrelevant, and they mostly are, but there is always a situation when such small upgrades matter. So if a webcam is important to you, the new Mac will be a good buy. The next thing that I didn't like was the notch. Yes, you heard me right. Since 2021, I have been protecting this notch, saying that it would be useful. And now, almost 2 years after the first MacBook with a notch was released, I have totally lost any faith that Apple would do something about it. For me, it is something I could never wrap my head around. The first iPhone with a notch was launched in 2017, but the notch was functional. It hosted all the sensors for Face ID. In 2021, when I saw the new Macs with the notch, I thought maybe they will add Face ID next year. The time has passed, but there still is no Face ID on Macs. That notch is simply too big to be functional. The webcam isn't all that big, it doesn't require all that space, so why is the notch still so gigantic? I know the notch isn't the issue here, I'm just disappointed. I was expecting so much more from this laptop, but all I get is all the same stuff. So yeah, that's the next reason. I must say, the display itself is gorgeous. It's the same as in previous models, but this doesn't make it worse. I've used my 2021 MacBook Pro for quite some time, and I personally love this display. It's super bright, super crisp, super colorful, and of course, super smooth thanks to that Pro Motion. High refresh rate is great to have, you know, because I kind of worried that Apple would take it away, especially given other drawbacks of this laptop, but yeah. The screen is fantastic, there is no way around that. There is actually one more negative thing for me. Where is my power adapter with multiple USB-C ports? We got one for the M2 Air, but Pro laptops are left without it. Why? Can't you stick another Type-C into that 96-watt brick? I think at least the ability to choose such a power brick would be a significant advantage over last year's model. Just saying. As you can see, there are not enough reasons for me to keep this laptop. It performs exactly the same, sounds worse, still has a notch, and doesn't make any substantial leaps forward. It is a lost generation, a stopgap between generations. If you can buy the refurbished 2021 model, that may be a better choice. At least it is for me. However, if you own an older Mac, this 2023 model can also be a good buy if you spec it correctly. Add 16 more gigs of RAM, at 500 gigs of storage, and max out the M2 Pro chip. That will be expensive, but at least it will be new. But be prepared to use headphones at all times.